And with great pleasure, we are joined by our head coach, Kevin Stefanski, joining us from the home office back in the Twins. Coach, I guess the most important question right out of the gates is, do your kids still like you?
There's been a lot of exposure from Dad these days, and I don't know how excited they are. But it's been an interesting time for our family. I'm sure, like most families. I will tell you, I just introduced my boys to the original American Gladiator on YouTube.
Ah,
So that's my big win today, is I got them watching that. So after this, I'm going to see what Nitro does
Nitro.
in the gauntlet here. But so got to get creative, and we're trying to do that.
Coach, there's a balance, right, of the absurd. I did that with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with my boys yesterday, the original. So I introduced them to that after some, not exactly thrilled about it early on, but then really got into it. And then the sublime and surreal scenes that we're seeing around the world, and the heroic efforts are being done on our front lines by medical workers. And I'm sure you're keeping an eye on that as well. What are your reactions to what you've seen around the world and around our country?
I mean, I've just been blown away from the heroicism of the heroic nature of these people in the medical industry. I can't get over it. How they're risking their lives to help others is just unbelievable. And I think it's in every city. It's been well documented, but I know this, my thoughts, the thought of my family, and I know organizationally we are with the people on the front lines in this thing. And those are, we throw that hero term out a lot in sports, but I think you're seeing it in real life. So it's certainly something that I know I've just, you watch the news coverage, and as down as it can get you, it can also just reinvigorate you from the human spirit, which is on full display.
No doubt, Coach. And you talked about organizationally supporting these people. It starts with our ownership, the donations made by the Haslams. And then not only that, some of your players, Baker and Jarvis and Denzel and Miles and Larry Ogunjobi, all contributing. And what did that mean to you?
I think it's awesome. And starting with Dee and Jimmy, and the community spirit that is so, I've felt it in my time in Cleveland, how connected we as an organization are to our community, and to see everybody giving back. I think that's a process that's just going to be constant. And I'm so impressed with what our guys are doing. And it's going to be something that we're going to have to keep doing. It's definitely not something where you say, hey, I supported and now I'm going back to my normal life. I think all of us need to kind of adjust in our support of those on the front line.
And Coach, I'm also amazed at how quickly, as I mentioned off the top, you're working out of your home in Minneapolis, because if you're going to quarantine, you want to quarantine with your family. We heard you on the conference call yesterday. Your kids know that smart decision to make, but also I think of like RIT people who have been able to get you guys to be able to communicate together so seamlessly from afar. It's an incredible job how quickly they got opening. In many ways, they think, an NFL team, we're just like everybody else right here, where we're working remotely, and it's gone off pretty well.
It's been incredible. That's the true MVP of our offseason so far, is our IT department, our video department. It's not ideal, but it's been pretty seamless. I've been very impressed with the amount of work we're able to get done. And I'm experiencing this on these Zoom calls, and I think the rest of the world, our fans, are experiencing this on these Zoom calls. You really have to focus in. There's less opportunity to go off on a tangent, so it makes you even more productive and more efficient in what you're doing. So, but you're right. Credit to our video department. They've been outstanding. Our IT department, just so impressed with that group, because in times like this, in a challenge like this, we have to be so collaborative. And we're able to do that with this technology, which has been incredible.
That's amazing. We can all still be together. And most people probably think of a head coach in the NFL. They got the big office, the big screen to watch film, but you're kind of like everybody else in the world right now. We're all at home doing our own thing. And I'm sure that's not how you envision, and none of us envision this, obviously, the beginning going, but that's got to be kind of an interesting feeling for, that you're in the same boat literally as everybody.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting at my kitchen counter in the morning, and I got my Surface up and sitting there and listening to the offensive staff and chiming in on a couple things. And then I'll jump over and I'll be listening in on Andrew Berry and the scouts and their draft meetings that are going on. Then I'll have a phone call all the while my 10-year-old is doing his 4th grade homework right next to me. So he's listening in on all these calls. I say, you like listening to daddy work? As he's looking at long division problems. So it's unique. And it's, again, I come back to it. We are at the exact same disadvantage to the rest of the league, to the rest of the world. So there's just no reason to dwell on that. Let's just make sure we're getting our work done.
Coach, from a football perspective, what you guys are able to do in free agency, and if you went from an organizational wish list standpoint and you say, well, you'd love to have a top flight tight end, you'd love to have a top flight tackle, and AB in his first free agency along with you and Paul, boy, did you crush it with those guys in terms of what you need to do offensively. If you would, sir, just a couple of minutes on the plan that was implemented and the way that it was executed that landed you the type of players that Hooper and Conklin are.
First of all, you buried the lead there a little bit with that pullover you're wearing. That's pretty sharp.
So I've told the people the story. This is in the office. I've told this story, and when we talked about plans, so we saw you at the Combine. For those who weren't listening the day that we told this story, we saw you at the Combine. You were showing this quarter zip, which is spectacular, and I couldn't even hardly conduct the interview. It was so spectacular with the simple striping. And you said, you know what, I'll take care of you guys. And to be fair, we've heard this from a lot of coaches and luminaries that, oh, we'll get you one. And by Monday, we had them in the studio. So it's on a list, and it was taken care of. So it speaks to the type of man you are, sir. Well, I agree.
And it segues into our free agency plan. We had a plan, and we followed through. And, I had a wish list like you guys had a wish list for that pullover. But it really speaks to, we sat down organizationally. I'm talking D and Jimmy and Paul and Andrew and JW. And we looked at the roster like every team does. And you start to look at places where you say, all right, we could use a player of this caliber there. Well, you may feel that way, and then that player may not be available in the market that year. So there's some moving parts to it. I just think all the credit has to go to Andrew Berry and his group. They identified these players with the help of the assistant coaches and the coordinators and what the skill set required would be to fit into our system. And you have this plan. And the great part is when you can follow through. A lot of times you have a plan and you can't follow through for a variety of factors, but we were able to identify a few key pieces that we felt were real important to what, I keep coming back to what we want to do. So schematically what we want to do, but also what we want to be about. Because in free agency, the guys you bring in, that you're making a statement about those are the type of guys you believe in. And I think the guys that we've brought in are the right makeups. They're the type of guys that we want to be Cleveland Browns. So I'm talking free agency. We're talking, I can't believe I got this far without talking about Andy Janovich, our fullback, acquiring a fullback via trade. This whole offseason, you look at it from a player acquisition period, and that's free agency, that's trades, that's the draft. And free agency is ongoing. The trade market is ongoing, as we all know, and we're getting ready for this draft. But this is such a big period for us to add some really good players. Okay, that's important, and we're adding some good players, but they got to be the right people. I just believe so strongly in that. And we have a lot of good people in this building already, and we know who those guys are in that locker room. And now let's add a bunch more good guys to it that are good players, that are going to compete at a high level, that are going to push each other, but that ultimately fit schematically what we want to do. And I can talk to those guys also, but also just, are they the right people? Are they the right people that we want to bring in is such a big piece of this.
Yeah, and I think that was clear. And in fact, we talked with both Jack Conklin and Austin Hooper, and I've talked to Case Keenum, all the new players, and they all said that it was about building a culture, and they were thrilled to be a part of that. You mentioned the scheme fit. Obviously, Austin played in it his rookie year or something similar with Kyle Shanahan down in Atlanta, and he told us that was a huge part of his decision. He said, I wanted to get back into that offense because I thought that was the most difficult to defend offensive system I've ever been in. And of course, Conklin had familiarity from Tennessee. Knowing this could be kind of a weird offseason, how important was it to have those big ticket items be people that at least were schooled in this system before they even get here?
Yeah, that's definitely a consideration with the uniqueness of this offseason. But both those guys that you mentioned, I mean, Austin, I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. Him in this system, I've seen what he's able to do on the line of scrimmage, opened up. There's a versatility to what you can ask him to do. He's also a young player. He's a smart player. So those tight end positions, we're going to ask Austin and David and these guys to move around the formation. So the intelligence piece is really important so that we can, be versatile. When you talk about using tight ends and multiple tight ends, 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4, you really want to have the ability to dictate to the defense. And I think having multiple guys allows us to do that. That's also true, honestly, of the running back position, having a guy that can line up out in the slot and line up in the backfield, having receivers that you can bring into the backfield, which we've done in past years, and different things you can do. So versatility is such an important part. And I think that's where Austin gives us the ability to move him, move David, whoever, in that moment. We may have a play that fits Austin's skill set, so we want to line him up in the Y. Hey, we got this play fits David's skill set. We want to line him up at the Y. We can move those guys. That's the nice part of having smart players at the tight end position. And then you mentioned Jack. I mean, that there was plenty of reps to watch Jack in his run blocking. Certainly, with what they did down there in Tennessee, was very impressive. I think he's a really sound football player, pass protection wise, run game wise. He's a tough football player. He's a Big Ten football player, so that's where some of these guys are really, show that toughness. So I just think he's a really important piece for us. I think Coach Callahan is an outstanding teacher. So like all of our coaches, but Coach Callahan will be able to bring a guy like Jack along pretty quickly, I believe, in how he teaches and what he's able to get out of these guys. But adding another smart, tough football player to that room was really important.
Hey, you mentioned having smart tight ends. I know it wasn't Penn, but Stanford, not a bad thing on Austin Hooper's resume there, coming out as the tight end. Let's talk about this offense just real quickly, because you've got Baker. Now you bring Case Keenum into that room. You've got Nick Chubb. You've got Kareem Hunt. You bring Andy Janovich in as a fullback who can block. He can catch it. He can run it. We've seen that year. A 2-receiver set predominantly. You've got Odell. You've got Jarvis. The 2 tight ends, Hooper, David. You address right tackle, left tackle. A smart person told me at the combine, it's easy to fall in love with some of these guys that are in this draft. So offensively, are there things that you feel you need to address, or do you feel pretty good now, at least on that side of the ball, with this roster makeup headed into this offseason?
Yeah, I think the roster is always fluid. You're always looking to add pieces. I mean, that's true really of every position. So you want to get to the point in the draft where you're just adding good players regardless of the position. You're not drafting for need, is the ideal. But, listen, we added some good players. It's the classic, on paper it says one thing, but that's going to be up to the guys and our coaches to work. And we're not going to speak anything into existence. So there's plenty of work to be done. I know in this offseason, that's going to be our focus with the players whenever we get the rules and the structure of what is allowed and isn't allowed. We're just going to be about the work. And then finally, whenever we get our hands on these guys and can start developing this offense, we'll be ready. But it's about getting the right people. That's the start. But now the big piece for me, and all of our players have heard this from me, they're sick of hearing this from me and via text messages, is we're about work. And that's where our focus will be.
Coach, I'll get you out of here. Go ahead, Z.
I was just going to jump in real quick on the text messages. We were talking with Mac Wilson. We're doing a work from home series, and he said that he reached out to you just because, to let you know he was there and that he's working. He's getting excited, and that you wrote him back, "Yo," and he's like, "I love this guy. This is my guy."
That's the Philly in me. Yo's something that you guys will hear from me, or my kids hear from me, or our players will hear from me. I can't help that.
Coach, I'll get you out of here on this one. Back to the family life aspect of it. Is there something you've rediscovered with your kids, or something you pulled out of the closet that you've had to do that was cool that maybe you could pass along to our listeners, and maybe they could try too?
What's making a comeback is Wii golf. Remember Wii?
Sure.
Yeah. 10 years old. Sure. That kind of came out of the woodwork, and that's been a big hit the past few weeks.
That's fantastic. Coach, thanks for your time, man. We do appreciate you a great deal, and stay safe, stay healthy, and look forward to seeing you in person again as soon as we can.
Yeah, likewise, guys. Be safe, be with your family, and thinking about all you guys.
Thanks, Coach.